my name is Michelle Owens. I'm an event professional, so mostly in events, private events and weddings. My business is Mo & Co. Event Coordination. So Mo is my initials, MO, Co. is company. I just always wanted it to be more than me and not just like Michelle Owens. What you see is what you get. I had a bride's dad's defibrillator went off during his speech, which kind of means you're having a heart attack. And the bride and groom are just getting there, and the groomsmen come flying out of the limo with their like boutonnieres all over the place. You've been there. The officiant, like it was 2 minutes after we were supposed to start the ceremony. She's not there. I'm like, oh, okay, I think I have to go down the aisle and like marry these two. I actually recently found one of his journals that he wrote during the first time he went to rehab. So it's like day 1, day 2. And like he always would really finish off a lot of his posts and his daily texts with, I'm grateful for 2 feet and a heartbeat. What is this? Oh my God, guys. You're gonna make me cry.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new podcast. My name is JJ Vola. Alongside here is my cousin Cal Vola. Welcome to What Do You Do podcast. Today we are joined by Michelle Owens. Michelle, thank you so much for being a part of today's podcast. Tell everybody just a brief description of what you do.
What a loaded question. Thanks, guys. My name is Michelle Owens. Currently, I'm an event professional, so mostly in events, private events and weddings. But history of a million things have gotten me here between sales, dog walking, hospitality, a bit of everything, and currently traveling full time while trying to maintain and operate a couple businesses.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We'll definitely look forward to diving in exactly what you do on a day-to-day. Take us back to your younger years coming out of high school, or even during high school. What were some of your first jobs?
Yeah, so it was funny when I thought about this recently. I thought really every role I've had, I think, from as early as I can remember working until now has kind of been like a based on who you know, through who you know kind of thing, which I think I underestimated the power of in my early days. But I started hostessing at the local restaurant, the Royal Coachman in Waterdown.
Oh, cool.
At like age 15, if that was legal. I don't know when you're allowed to start working.
Yeah.
Then,
I think I worked at 14, Tim Hortons. So I think you're right at 14.
Okay, so I was good. Okay, great. My grandparents were regulars and I was going all the time. So I started hostessing there and worked pretty much all through high school there. And then just a variety of hospitality jobs, serving as soon as I could, bit of bartending, worked in the kitchen a little bit between there, the keg. And then going into university, just kind of kept doing that always. So hospitality, food and bev, some event stuff, some operations. And in between that, I was kind of doing everything I could to I traveled during the summer when I was in school and in university. So a lot of people use their summers, I feel like, in school to work so that they could save money for school. But I was like, that's not an option because I need to travel during that time. So I was always going home on the weekends and working at the bar in Waterloo that everyone was going to so that I could like still hang on those nights, but get paid to be there. So lots of hospitality and sales and customer service has kind of brought me to where I am now with my events business.
Wow.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Laurier.
Laurier. Okay.
Yeah.
What'd you take?
So I started in communications and called my dad about 100 times a day to tell him I was dropping out and that I hated university.
Oh, no.
Did not think it was for me. Loved the people aspect of it and socializing and just wanted to hang out. And then realized when I wanted to go on exchange and start traveling that the options were limited in communications. So I switched programs to global studies so
cool.
that I could go on exchange and do some courses abroad.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why wasn't university a good fit for you? Because a lot of people, they go to college university because they feel like they have to. Mm-hmm. But why did you feel like it wasn't good for you?
I don't know. I think it was just more like what I had learned so far and what I wanted to continue to do. It just didn't feel applicable through like the textbook style learning and exams and sometimes lack of like one-on-one or that communication with professors, especially in those first couple years, right? You're in classrooms of hundreds of people. So I think I just felt like I was missing that connection a little bit. Didn't know if I needed something a bit more hands-on, contemplated college versus university. So it was just like a different style of learning. But my dad at the time was doing like sales and some HR through a few different companies and was like, don't stop. Like you just need to get it on the resume, finish the program. You'll meet some great people. So I carried on, just switched programs, obviously, so I could keep traveling.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah,
Good for you. And you graduated. You finished.
I did. Yeah, we
Okay.
did it.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
did
'cause
it.
I dropped out.
Yeah,
That's usually what people
Yeah.
love to know. Did
Yeah.
they go through
Couple close calls, but we made it. Yeah. So I did in second year, between first and second year, I did a Spanish course in Spain for one summer, which was pretty cool. Lived with a Spanish family, went to a Spanish university there, and that applied as like some credits towards my degree. Way more my style of learning. And then third year, I did an exchange in England,
Wow.
which was cool.
And
Yeah.
just for the viewers, like, are you expected to learn in that course? Like, what would you get out of from value going to a course like that?
Global studies, so a lot of like international development, like a bit of poli-sci. So a few of my friends have gone on to work with like different NGOs and things like that. But yeah, for me, it just kind of brought a little bit more of that global awareness element, I think, into everything that I do now, and having a little bit more of that awareness.
Cool.
What's an NGO?
Like a nonprofit,
Okay,
basically.
okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So different organizations around the world, locally and globally, that that work through different initiatives there. So some of my friends from the program have gone on to work there.
Okay.
And like Doctors Without Borders and things like that, and different initiatives.
Sure. How many
Yeah.
languages can you speak? Is it
2.
Yeah.
Yeah, English and Spanish.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing beyond that.
So when you go on vacation, you're probably pretty good, huh?
Yeah, working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, is it uncomfortable, like going through that process of like, going through a whole new culture, really living with that Spanish family and all that kind of stuff? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, I think the discomfort is like I've probably, like any of us, learned the most in my uncomfortable situations. I had my host mom was so scary. We had to like literally bring our dictionary to the dinner table, and it was like, if you don't know how to say it, figure it out. And I think that now that I even say it out loud right here is a bit of a representation probably of what, some advice a lot of us can use around, if you don't know it, what can we do to figure it out? So that was a little bit scary and uncomfortable, but ultimately at the end of it, like my mom came to visit. We went to Italy at the end of my course, and we like met up in Spain and then went to Italy, and we went and sat down at a restaurant, and I like ordered the whole meal. And she was like, what? Like I had left a month before that not speaking any Spanish. So I think like that total immersion of being really, immersed into the culture, the lifestyle, living at the house, being at the university, and kind of feeling forced there a bit was good.
Cool.
Yeah. So we learn a lot in the uncomfortable.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you went to school, you graduated, you've done some traveling, and then after that, post school, what was your first job out of school?
What was my first job out of school? Air Canada. Yeah, I went straight to Air Canada. I had a friend who worked there and really wanted the flight perks, obviously. So I reached out to her, I think probably before I even graduated. So I took a year off between high school and university. Wasn't the plan. Got accepted to Humber, was going to go for PR and another form of kind of communications there. And then just had a bit of FOMO. I was like, this is a time where I think I can take some time off and travel. And so I got a job working as a nanny, actually. I left that very important part out in Australia.
Oh.
So moved kind of across the world and worked and lived with a family there that had 2 kids. So I would have been like 18, I guess. Yeah.
Wow.
18 at the time. And went and lived with them for 6 months. And yeah, it was cool. I fell in love with the kids. It was an amazing experience. And then during that time, just kind of what I wanted shifted a bit. So I think I started to lean into some more possibilities professionally and thought, why not get a degree? And the program I was going to do at Humber was more of like a hands-on college style learning, but coming out with a degree anyways. So then I kind of transitioned there. I had deferred my acceptance to Humber and then never went, and then reapplied and went to Laurier.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was kind of a little plot twist in there, but that's what my life's been full of, I feel like, is these plot twists.
Yeah. And that's incredible, like you want to go do something and you're like, you think this is right, but like in your gut, you're like, is this really right for me right now, or should I do something else? And going to Australia, like what a ride that must have been. And I've met a lot of Australians like when I was in California, and they're just they love Canadians. I don't know what it is about it, but like they just love us and we love them. Like so what was like the best part of that trip for you, being in Australia?
Probably honestly the experience with the family. Like it was just, I think I was talking about this with my best friend recently, Haley Robinson, you might remember from high school. So she actually came out to visit me and nanny for the family next door for like a short period, a few weeks. And we were saying, because all of our friends, as we were just talking about, have babies now. And it was just like having that natural, I guess that experience of like living and working in a family and like taking on some of those responsibilities at such a young age, I think just really developed a lot of my traits and characteristics I have now, and a bit of like that nurturing person, I guess, that I naturally am. But that experience was awesome. And I was meant to stay, I think, like 12 weeks, maybe 2 to 3 months. And then a few months in, we kind of renegotiated and knew I wanted to stay longer. So I took a break, went over to Asia, which there is like going to the States, like a, short flight for a couple weeks off, and then came back and stayed a bit longer. So just some good life experiences. Like I was pretty young traveling, and definitely the longest I had been away from home
And I
at
can
the
just
time.
imagine you grow up so fast with
Totally.
that too. Like 18 years old, being a nanny, and having to take care of young ones too. So you almost
sure.
become like a mom figure in that sense so quickly, right? Wow.
Yeah.
Now, and then after that, you went to Air Canada.
I did, yeah. So I had a friend that worked there, got a job working as an administrative assistant for a woman who worked in operations there. So I went and worked at the operations center in Brampton and it was pretty full on like corporate 9 to 5. So at the time it was kind of like, this is what you do, right? You get a big girl job at a school when you graduate.
Yeah.
And I was just less than 2 years, and I loved the job, loved the perks, loved the people. But like I didn't have time to even use the flight passes. You get 2 weeks vacation, maybe a year, and heavy commute and office style. So just really quickly realized wasn't necessarily for me.
And what did you do there exactly?
I worked at the operations center is kind of the hub for all flight planning. So everything in like staffing, maintenance, all the planes that are on the ground, everything like that, and monitoring the operations of them all. So I was an admin assistant for the entire operations team. So working with like fleet management, fuel efficiency.
Cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Like even to say it now, I'm like, that's kind of not me, but it was so fun. Planes are me because I use them. But other than that, yeah, it was really cool. And nice to have that experience, right? In a bit of that corporate world. Because I have certainly never gone back.
They really need you right now because they're dropping the ball.
I know.
What I
Yeah, it's
understand.
all because I left.
Yeah, exactly. Jeez. Okay, so after Air Canada, where'd you go next?
So that was when I started my current business that I have now.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, in January, I guess it'll be 6 years, 7 years.
No way.
Yeah, so wild.
What is that business?
Sorry, my business is Mo & Co Event Coordination. So Mo is my initials, MO, Co is company. I just always wanted it to be more than me and beyond me and more people than me and not just like Michelle Owens doing these things. And I can say that that's definitely what it's become. So I really tried to, everyone always thought initially that it was like someone else's initials. But yeah, company of anyone who was going to accompany me along building that business and that journey.
I thought someone else, like you had a partner or something like that at one point, but clearly it's Mo and Company.
Just me and company.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how's that experience been so far? Like starting a business, being an entrepreneur, like, you know, like where do I start? What do I do? So did you like incorporate or?
I'm sole proprietor. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's been, oh my gosh, the experience amazing and overwhelming and daunting and awful and wicked at the same time over the last 6-7 years. It's been quite a journey. It certainly has become everything that I never planned for it to. I had no expectations in starting the business, which I think maybe had a little bit to do with the success that it did bring, was having those limited expectations and knowing that I kind of wanted to do something on my own and work for myself was going to be something on the side. At the time, I had some friends, siblings that kind of started getting married a couple years older than me. And, you know, we're from a small town, backyard tent weddings and all that. So I was like, oh, I'll help out. I'll do this. And then one thing led to another in branding myself and wanting to write things off for tax purposes. So maybe I'll make a business name and okay, then maybe I'll make an Instagram page. And one thing kind of led to another. So yeah, I started that mostly doing weddings. Now we're kind of 80-20 on weddings with corporate events, private events, like corporate retreats, things like that. So it's nice to mix in a few things there that aren't weddings, but it's really been our bread and butter since we started.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
How was it over COVID though?
Insane.
Oh.
I mean, my whole life is like events and travel.
Yeah.
So it was like, Wah, wah.
I know.
Yeah. So it was, we shifted. I pivoted a ton. It was a lot of working what felt like to the same capacity, but for no money. Like couples were really getting the short end of the stick and postponements and having to pay new vendors for a new date and do all that. And all I could do really was try and support and help them navigate that, but not charge them. Like it wasn't their fault, So I had a good roster of clients for that year and ultimately the year after that I just kind of stuck with and didn't take much more than that. But financially, I had to find other ways to bring in money because that wasn't it during COVID. Yeah, so I moved up to Muskoka and I applied to Lululemon. And I worked in the store and lived on the water, and it was just kind of a time to regroup and have a job that I loved in a space that I loved with great people, but still be available enough for my clients as we kind of navigated that process.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, if somebody wanted to book your service, how much would you charge to plan a wedding, or does it change per client?
It really changes. Yeah, we mostly do what's called event management. So you would, let's say you're getting married, you've booked your venue, booked mostly all of your vendors, you know what you want, and now you just kind of want someone else to take over and execute that. It involves a 6-month check-in, a 3-month check-in, and then pretty heavily working together for that month of leading up to the wedding. And then, of course, being there on the day and for the rehearsal and things like that. That's about $2,500. And that is kind of mid to higher end range in this area and in Muskoka. And then full planning, we don't do as much of. I just find by the time a couple gets to us, they at least already have a few vendors. So for me, it's not fair to really charge them that full planning when they've done a lot of that legwork. So I'm just kind of a la carte and flexible with the services of adding on the option of me sourcing some vendors for them along the way.
Right. And what would be your responsibility or your task that you would take away from your customers?
Probably just more so the execution side of things. So, I mean, when you plan an event and you're the main contact for all of those people leading up to the event as well as on the day of, and then you got to walk down the aisle, it doesn't really work. So just being able to, I always say to clients, dump everything from your brain into mine so that anything that comes up as I take over that correspondence with vendors for that month leading up to the wedding, they'll start to ask me when they can't find parking or if they're vegan or if they need a table or to be near an outlet and all those little details that pile up. And then just have someone who I think is that third party, unbiased opinion and professional. I don't work for the venue or any of the other vendors, and I'm not part of their family, right? So it's nice for them to kind of have someone to take over and lead things like the rehearsal. And there's always family politics and dynamics and all of that. So I can just kind of come in and, be that person for them and that support through the process.
Now, I know you can't control things that just out of your control, like weather or whatever the case is. But what are things that are difficult when doing event planning?
Weather.
Yeah, weather's the
This
worst.
summer,
Yeah,
weather all the
really?
time.
It is bad.
It has been so tough this summer, but it's been good to kind of remind clients, even that I'm working with for next year, love your plan B just as much as your plan A. And if you have to get married inside that venue, do you love it? Because it's so out of your control and you just spend every day until your wedding, which is sometimes a year and a half, 2 years, stressing about the weather that you have no control over. So that, and then just things that come up, there's always something. Someone's sick, especially through COVID. Someone has COVID. Someone has this. A car broke down. The unexpected, you just kind of have to be prepared for. But that is the reason it's hard. It's unexpected. You can't plan for it.
Yeah.
So just kind of doing the best we can with what we've got and my team support. Family dynamics are tough too. When I'm there for the bride and groom. If it's a wedding, I'm there for them, and there's a lot of opinions in there, and to try and please everybody can be tough, but
Definitely stressful,
Yeah.
You have this entire this vision that the bride has wanted since she was a little girl, and she's coming to you with that vision, and then you have to orchestrate that day, put everything together, take all the stress from everybody else, put it on you, and
totally.
execute that day to on a level that they're gonna love it, right? And so how do you deal with that? Even do you need a day or two to decompress after a wedding, kind of refill the batteries, or?
Yeah, definitely. I think like, well, a lot of what my job feels like on the day of too is really just being there for them. So every time I question myself, I went on my Instagram story at the wedding I had on the weekend saying, I always question myself, like, do I need an assistant today? It's not that much. I don't need one. And I always bring someone, and I'm so grateful when I'm there because if they can be, off setting up centerpieces or florals or moving signs around, and the bride and groom are just getting there, and the groomsmen come flying out of the limo with their like boutonnieres all over the place. You've been there. And it's like getting out of the limo and trying to like put those back on and fix the bride's hair and do all these things and just like, mentally support to the entire group, then those things can be taken care of. Because that's another thing that's tough is feeling like I want to be in more than one place at a time, especially between ceremony, cocktail hour, reception. Then there's the family, the bride and groom, the vendors, like DJ's over here needs to know where to plug in and all those things. So that can be tough and definitely need the decompress afterwards. I sleep like a baby that night, and then the next day call it my wedding hangover without any alcohol. It's like my body doesn't work, my brain doesn't work.
Yeah.
So recharging, and that can be tough during the wedding season because it's so back to back. It's like Sunday, Monday morning. You're like, okay, now we got to start thinking about this weekend.
Sure.
I'm sure you've done like a lot of planning over these past 6 years to be exact. What, just for our viewers, what has been one of the hardest moments or memories that you've gone through planning an event?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Or just something catastrophic that went wrong that...
I had a bride's dad's defibrillator went off during his speech, which kind of means you're having a heart attack. So I had to navigate like kind of getting him out of the room without her knowing and like keep it. He just cut his speech short and got out. So then he's like in the other room. We're calling an ambulance. He was fine. Everything was fine. Everyone was good. But that is like, for example, something you cannot plan for, right?
Wow.
Having to like, and then get my assistant to cue the next speeches, make sure bride's distracted. He really wanted to slide out, go get checked out, and ideally come back to the wedding.
Right.
Yeah, so everyone was fine, but like one example that comes to mind of things that go on. A wedding you were at, Brittany and Cody's wedding. They know this story, so I'll tell it. But the officiant, like it was 2 minutes after we were supposed to start the ceremony. She's not there. I'm like, oh, okay, I think I have to go down the aisle and like marry these two. I had the script from the officiant because we were at the rehearsal. I was like, do I just do this and send them to City Hall later? Like we're about to start walking down the aisle. Anyway, she came. But now I always bring a copy of the officiant script because I'm like, if I had to go up there and marry those two and someone doesn't show up, you never know. There's always something. I'll come back. We'll do a podcast just on like all the things that have happened at every wedding that
curious.
You cannot plan for.
Yeah. For sure.
Wow.
That's incredible. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So you have Mo & Co., super successful business. You had 3 weddings over the weekend, which is just absolute anarchy, and so you also said that you have something else going on, Michelle.
Yeah, so I'm always kind of doing a couple things on the side. I'm working a few remote sales jobs right now, which is great for same thing, just like meeting people and always kind of being affiliated with different networks and connections of things going on, especially within events and wedding industry. Through COVID, I worked with a couple guys that are friends of mine on a cottage rental and concierge business. So that was when I was in Muskoka. One thing kind of led to another, and I met these guys. And so for 2 years, we worked on building a business that was around, cottage rentals in Muskoka, more heavily on the Tri-Lakes of Lake Joe, Rosso, and Muskoka, and then concierge services for all them. So there's a huge demand for things like private chefs, private yoga instructors, live music, people hosting parties at home. Had a lot in common with what I was doing with events and then kind of that networking of cottage rentals and stuff like that. So that was a wild ride during COVID because, of course, rentals locally kind of boomed when people couldn't travel. So as much as my events were taken away, we started doing that. And I'm still affiliated with them and doing some consulting and concierge work. But ultimately, when weddings came back, I jumped back in there.
No way. And that all happened because of COVID.
Yeah.
You started that. You started that up, and you're no longer a partner in that, or
no.
You never
So
were?
the two guys that I worked with, the one who had founded it and started is still running the business, and it's still operating in Muskoka, which is great. And yeah, so I kind of switched gears during COVID. As I said, went up, worked at Lululemon. And then by the end of that summer, I just knew I wanted to stay in Muskoka longer. So I applied to a wake surfing company as like an admin assistant.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, one thing led to another again, who, this guy calls me, who's now a great friend of mine, and was just like, I saw your resume and your application. I got other plans for you. I'm starting out this other business. What do you think about doing this with me? So we started that up he had kind of already started it, and then I joined in, and we did that for 2020 and 2021. And then into last year, I guess. So sorry, end of 2020 is when I started, into the end of last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much going on.
I know. I'm overwhelmed too.
You became like event planner for cottages.
Yeah,
really.
literally. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a lot of the same skills for sure, especially with people, and like managing expectations of a, high caliber vacation is similar to managing the expectations of the biggest day of your life in a wedding. So I could draw lots of parallels and experiences there for sure.
I just can't imagine the cost that goes into, let alone renting the cottage, then
Yeah.
wanting to have a private chef and all the extras, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Just keeps adding up, right?
It's a different
sure.
world. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And lots of international like travel from people that had come overseas and were staying in Canada. People wanting to rent spaces up north because they their offices had closed down. So there were a few different things to navigate with that COVID layer as well, as everybody had.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also, so I just found this out not too long ago. And so you started something called Wander and Waves. So tell us about that, Michelle.
Yeah, so I started Wander in Waves during COVID, actually. So 2020, and it was like strictly out of a bit of frustration around the world of mental health and addiction. So I had been traveling the world, as you guys know, for a very long time up until that point, and so had my brother. We had lived in all these like surf towns around the world, and it was kind of based around, I had been volunteering at a drug and alcohol rehab in Muskoka, and was like sitting one day outside with a bunch of these people that were there as clients and as patients, and they were all chatting about other rehabs they had been to and like different types of support that they had along the way. And I mean, it was great and they all had each other, but something just wasn't adding up around that type of support. Like if you've all been to a rehab before and tried this style of recovery and are now back here, maybe there's a missing puzzle piece there. And so Wander in Waves was kind of created as, it was a COVID project for me. I was totally in isolation. I did my 2 weeks quarantine coming back from Asia and just started like drawing up some logos and putting together some thoughts of a brand, like a lifestyle brand that people could identify with that would ideally support alternative recovery. So anything along the lines of, to name a few, like surf therapy or music therapy or yoga therapy or a combination of all of those, plus maybe traveling, plus maybe going to rehab, plus then doing therapy, like building a bit of this toolbox along the way. So it isn't anything that has like officially launched in any way other than I've branded a few things for a couple events that we have done and reached out to a few different places around the world really that offer this type of alternative recovery and support. So the idea is that it will be merchandise and apparel with a portion of proceeds going to these different institutions, I guess, in different locations and different areas where people can seek this alternative support for recovery within mental health and addiction.
Wow.
So the name of Wander in Waves was more so wandering. I'm forever wandering still around the world and here. And then waves, just like living in surf towns and kind of that analogy of riding the wave of life a little bit.
And do you surf?
Not well, but I do. Yeah. Yeah.
I tried it one time. It was terrible.
Yeah.
I got up once and it was like, all right, that's enough. I got up.
Yeah.
So, life is like you said, like it's a wave. You're up, you're down, and you're riding it out as best you can. And every day is different, which is exciting, but at the same time, it's there's a lot of tribulations that we go through and whatnot. And you had a family member that went through a lot. And can you speak to about Chris and kind of his story a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So again, that was sort of a lot of the inspiration behind Wander in Waves. I had created it, like I said, in 2020. So at the time, my brother was with us. But in the fall of late August of 2021, he did pass away. So after navigating a lot of his struggles for years through mental health and addiction, he lost that battle. I don't like really saying that in the term that he lost the battle, because was not a fight that he didn't fight every single day. But that kind of resurfaced the Wander in Waves and what it meant to me and to my family and to him after he had passed away. So it was a journey that he battled for a very long time. And I think in terms of building that toolbox and gathering all the things that really worked for him, he did that well. And I've really tried to take that away from his passing too. And knowing that journey, like everything else really, is not linear and wasn't a straight line and wasn't one thing and there wasn't one solution. So Wander in Waves kind of resurfaced and came to life again after he had passed away in his honor. So we do have a run that we have done last year and this year, which will be the second anniversary of his passing, called A Run for Chris, where we do donate proceeds, 100% of proceeds from the run, to different organizations that he would have identified with or that would have or could have helped him along the way. So last year we donated to St. Joseph's Hospital, had a program for substance abuse for youth, specifically age like 17 to 25. There's a bit of a gap there between youth recovery and adult recovery. And this year we're working with the Hub in Hamilton, so they fill in a lot of gaps in that space as well. So yes, that is what we have coming up this Sunday in his honor and in his memory.
Incredible. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And, just to talk about like mental health just a little bit, men's mental health and women's, and everyone deals with some type of battle at one point or another. And, it's different for everybody. And, there's been times where even myself, like, you can't get out of bed or like find the motivation to like keep going and like all that kind of stuff. And we just had a podcast guest on Andrew, and he was talking about, the weight of being like, maybe trying to be a breadwinner in his family and like trying to, operate a business and have all these overhead costs and like try and like get through, all that kind of stuff. And, some days you just think, you're like, oh my God, like, is this all worth it? Like, is it really, why are we here? Like, what are we doing? Is this really worth it? And for some people, it's like super, super difficult. And like for other people, they can like power through that kind of stuff. And, someone like Chris, who I didn't know too well. Like I knew him through like Greg and like talking to him, Greg Farrell. And he's always been into personal development and like, and all that. And I started that pretty young too, with like Tony Robbins and all that kind of stuff. And it's crazy, like the battles that we go through all the time. And, just want to say, it's not easy for anybody. And I just, I haven't seen you a whole lot lately, but you've always been like this light in the darkness, if you will. Like just someone that's like super bubbly, super like outgoing, all the stuff that you have going on. Like it's just absolutely incredible. And we're so glad to have you on the podcast. And if anybody wants to go out and do the run for Chris, I mean, this isn't airing till after that, but I think we're gonna try and make it out as well. So super, super awesome. And even going back to the podcast that you were on, that you sent me, that I was able to listen to, it was like some really cool quotes that Chris would say. And do you remember those by chance?
Yes. So I actually recently found one of his journals that he wrote during the first time he went to rehab. So it's like day 1, day 2. And like, he always would really finish off a lot of his posts and his daily texts with, I'm grateful for 2 feet and a heartbeat. And it was like at the end of any day that he couldn't necessarily get through or felt like he couldn't, that was what he had at that time, which any of us really were like, that's bare minimum. We've got that. So we can carry it through into another day, right?
Sure.
What was the other one?
Yeah, I think you said it. It was you grow through what you get through.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you grow through what you go through.
Or what you go through.
Yeah, say that 10 times fast.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like there's not a whole lot that hasn't been awful and painful and that I have gone through in the last 30 years that I haven't actually learned from or hasn't gotten me to the next place. I think it's really like pole vaulted me, probably, if anything, into a bit of change or whatever it was at that time. The loss of Chris being one of them, for sure. Like and everything that we navigated through his recovery until then. And just like the learnings and the findings between everything from a breakup to a car accident to the loss of a job to, and I think a lot of us learned that through COVID as well, just like shaking things up, and that change that does happen and the uncomfortable that we started off by talking about has really happened, I think, a lot in the loss of Chris. Obviously, I would give anything for that to have not happened and been the way that things went, but I mean, like, for what you did know about that guy, I'm sure you can agree he lived more life in those 26 years than some people do in 80 or 90. And people in their later part of life have even said that to me, like the places that he's been, the things that he's done. I think it just really makes you think, too, about that impact that you leave on the world. And the messages I got from people in following his passing that were like nothing was about what he did or what he had. It was like how he made them feel, the things that he said. And someone said to me recently, they said if Chris had a list of his like top 100 friends, I wouldn't be on it. But like every time I was with them, you'd think I'm in the top 5. Like you felt seen and heard, and like he really just made that time and space for everyone. So I think it's a huge testament to the impact you can really leave on the world, you know?
Sure. Mm-hmm. And JJ and I, we have like a little gift for you. And my sister helped out big time on it. So I'll grab that for you really quick. But yeah, so just a little something from the podcast, and we really appreciate you coming on. I'm trying not to move my mic, but
gosh,
check it out.
Here.
There you go.
Oh my gosh.
Awesome.
What is that? Oh my God, guys. That's so cute.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to make me cry. Thank you. That's so sweet.
Yeah, we
I
did
love that.
a pillow cover just because, you know, you could take the pillowcase off and you could take it with you when you're traveling. And
Yeah, that's so sweet. I love that.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we'll bring it to the run.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah,
Thank you guys.
Yeah, no problem.
And to your sister, of course. Oh my God.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
My sister, she's like, I was like, we got to do this and
Yeah.
whatnot. And she's
Oh,
like
that's
in
so
Niagara on
nice.
the lake, and I'm like, oh my God, we didn't do it. She's like, I'll walk you through it. I'm like, what? I'm like,
my
I don't
God,
know how
you
to do
did
this stuff. Yeah, like I
What?
somehow a lot of
Look at
help, a lot of
you.
FaceTime. So
Yeah.
you know, and that when I listened to that podcast, I listened to that quote, and I was just like, you know, if people are having a bad day, that's like the one thing that, you know, you can be grateful for, right? And it's so important to be grateful for at least something, you know, and things will always get better, things will always improve, and we just have to work at it a little bit, you know, every day. And this is even something that JJ and I, you know, like doing the podcast, and it's like very kind of scary, you know, and you guys make it easy on us because you're incredible guests and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's just a little gift from us. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
And then it's those waves, right? Like what we talked about. I think it's so applicable. Like I was driving here, even coming over the Skyway, looking at the water, and it's like you can start to, I don't know if that's just me and my connection with the ocean and the water and what that represents for me, but like those tides and the waves, and they come in and they come out, and nothing's here to stay. And I'm a quotes person, clearly, but another one I love is all waves settle. And it's like along the lines with that 2 feet in a heartbeat of getting you through those moments of like, this too shall pass, all waves settle, this will end, you know, this will get better. And we talked about this a little bit briefly this morning and yesterday, when obviously this week for me is always really hard, and I think will be forever. But in me wanting to be like, okay, I'm not coming. I don't want to talk to you guys. I don't want to have this conversation. I don't want to go there. It's like I can do that or recognize that like all waves settle, and that it would seem a little bit hypocritical of me to not come here and show up in whatever state I am and whatever that means, and not, you know, talk about mental health and what that represents for everybody. Because I think there's finding that balance of keep going and do what you can. Some days you got it and some days you don't. And, you know, not necessarily just give up when things feel hard.
Sure. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing too is we're all so hard on ourselves, you know, more than what we portray people thinking about us. You know, we always beat ourselves up before anyone will ever make a comment that you're thinking about, whether you're overweight or whether, you know, just anything that you're going through. It's more of a personal battle, you know, and my fiance and I talk about this all the time, you know, like it's easier just to talk about it than to, you know, go through the mental stress of just in your mind that you're fighting yourself, you know?
Yeah.
And that was the biggest thing too, because like leaving my last job, it was so toxic for me and so bad for me that I was just in such a bad mental state that the only way to make myself happy was to drive to places that I could remember good memories. Like that was the only way, but I wouldn't tell anybody, you know, I had to go do what I had to do to get in those moments and then feel happier. But then once I started talking to, you know, my fiance and just like, I'm such in a dark place. Like, I don't know how to get out of it. But then as soon as I talked about it, it was just like easy. And then I realized that I just need to quit that. And then once I quit the job, the podcast started becoming more, you know, easier. Life's getting easier, even though I haven't made a single penny in the last 4 months. You know what I mean?
Sponsorships.
Yeah, it's coming. No.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how, you know, it doesn't matter how great of a job, whether it's job related, for me it was job related, but no matter how much money you're making, because I was making a great dollar at my last job, that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good it is. It matters what's inside and what you're going through. And it's crazy. So this last 4 months, even being with Cal too, reconnecting our relationships, because we haven't really seen each other since 2008. And there's a story with that, but but we've reconnected in the last 8 months. And that's kind of the reason why for this podcast. And every day is a new adventure and having great guests like you. But I think even for anyone who's listening, you know, give yourself great daily affirmations, you know,
Definitely.
like you are a great person, you know, the people that love you will miss you, you know, and talk to those people, you know what I mean? So, yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And there's always something to be grateful for, right? It's can be the littlest of things. And I shared with Cal every year on New Year's for the last few years, I've been sending these big texts out to what I would call probably my closest inner circle of maybe about 30 people. And that's just like family and some best friends. And it's like those slivers of like the best things through the year. And when you really look back on what a lot of those are, especially now that I'm mindful of them and kind of keep track of it, none of them are big. Like it's all little slivers of happiness and something that you maybe either experienced on your own or someone else directly impacted like you experiencing. And it makes all of those people aware. My goal on that New Year's text is like, here's to a great year and here's all the things. And if you're getting this, you were one of the people who probably directly impacted that glimmer. Have you seen this whole thing about the glimmers lately?
No.
So it's like the opposite of a trigger. It's a glimmer. And it's like, I think that's what it's called. I'll send you the thing.
Yeah.
And it's just like the sun in your like steam of your coffee in the morning, or like these little things that really can just like change your perspective or lead you to have a good day, whether it's directly impacted by someone else doing that random act of small kindness or something that you can find on your own. But I think there's always something to be grateful for, and all those small things really add up to be the big things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus. Okay.
Mic drop.
I'm gonna start doing some more glimmers.
Glimmers. I hope that's the right word.
Yeah. It's so important, you know, just like that one text you can send to someone to be like, hey, like, I really appreciate you and everything that you do for me, you know, and like that'll change their entire day. Like, and I read those texts that you sent out and I appreciate you sharing those. And, you know, like I really want to be in that group. But you know,
I'll send you
we're doing it. And, you know, that just shows what kind of person you are, Michelle. And, you know, and how selfless you are. You're thinking about, a lot of people are thinking about themselves and what they can kind of get out of life. Like, I feel like you're looking at how can I facilitate and make other people's lives better. And also, and through that, you know, you feel that, you know, a little bit of glimmer or that little bit of, you know, ray of sunshines, you know, and whatnot. And I think it just speaks volumes, you know, for you and, you know, everything that you're doing and the Run for Chris and Mo and Co and Wandering Waves, like it's a lot. And, I just want to say great job. You're absolutely killing it. And, hopefully everything, you know, keeps trucking in the right direction. And, if you ever need anything from us, you let us know. And, it's incredible. So, I mean, what's next?
Well, actually, I know we can keep talking all day, but to end the podcast shortly, a couple of things we love to ask every guest before we finish. What if you could give yourself 20-year-old advice, what would it be?
probably just not to get so hung up on like all the things we just talked about, like the next job and, you know, where you're going to live and what you're going to do. It's like bringing everything back full circle to Chris. Like I said, nobody's ever talked to me about what he did or how he made money or the car he drove or where he lived. It was like just paying more attention and giving more time to those relationships and those people and knowing that you'll figure out the rest. The world is so big and beautiful and there's so much to be explored. I definitely listened to my 20-year-old self who did say that, but it was all the other things that you can kind of ignore and know that everything will be okay.
Nice. Love it. I love it. And what goals do you have for the next 5 to 10 years?
I'd love to officially launch Wander in Waves. I really would love to start, especially with the overwhelming, wonderful support we've seen from Run for Chris. It's a huge testament to like everybody is fighting a battle, right? There's always something that someone can identify with. And if I can help any other family from going through that or someone else losing a Chris, brother, a friend, anything through any other types of alternative recovery, and Wander in Waves is a channel to do that and raise awareness, I'd love to, you know, jump 2 feet into that. So it's almost like I have no problem starting any business or initiative or anything. This one just feels so close to home. It's like, everyone's like, why haven't you done anything? It just feels like I want it to be perfect. And I think I need to go back to my Mo and Co starting and take away those expectations and know that I'll just try and do whatever I can. And keep traveling. This year I'll be going back to traveling full time. So I haven't done that in, I don't know, maybe 10 years. It's kind of been seasonal. I've done like a 6 month, or 8 and 4 kind of thing. So going back to traveling full time as of November.
Wow.
Yeah.
And even to go back to like the podcast that you sent me prior to this, and I guess a lot of people would send in stuff for Chris, like content, videos, pictures, all that kind of stuff. And when you would get that stuff, you would, you know, people would be like, sorry, I'm sending this to you. But ultimately, what was your response to that, Michelle?
Yeah, it was something my family and I realized not long after he passed away. 2 things, I guess. One was people always say, like, I'm sorry to bring it up, as if, like, it's not the only thing I'm always thinking about. So don't ever apologize for bringing him up or his name or anything. The other part of it was, like, people sending in videos and messages and like screenshots of texts that he sent. It's the only way that I can portray even now in this conversation the type of person he was, is by hanging on to those things. And I guess the reality is we don't get more of those, right? We're not going to get more texts from him, more photos, more videos. So it's all we have, our family, to hang on to, and means like the world to be able to feel like you can reconnect with him in some of those situations. So send all the content, because I know everybody has videos of him.
Yeah. Wow.
That's incredible. And I think that's just, you know, so important that you get that content, you know,
Of course.
for Chris. And like, if I ever lost my brother, like I wouldn't even know what I would do. I'd be like, oh my God, like where's all our photos? Where's all our videos? Like all that kind of stuff. So
Now, if anybody wanted to reach out to you for any event planning or, you know, help with their weddings, who do they call? How do they reach out to you?
My website is moandcoevents.ca and wanderinwaves.com.
Perfect.
And personal is Michelle Owens. What you see is what you get.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
Michelle, and do you want to ask any more questions, Cal?
no, the run is this weekend, which just won't be airing till after that. Maybe we could do a little soundbite or something like that for you. And then I guess if you guys don't make it out this year, make it out next year. Run for Chris, 5K run, walk. There's going to be a ton of sponsors out there that I saw. Like, you guys are doing an incredible job with that event and whatnot. So if they want to reach out or find out more information about
Yeah,
that.
that's we have an Instagram page called A Run for Chris. And yeah, again, it was something we never thought would happen more than once. It was one way that we could honor his life at the 1 year of his passing. And everyone that day was like, we can't wait for next year. And where's it going to be next year? And what color are the shirt's going to be? So it has now become something that hopefully we can continue to give back and find ways to support. Like I said, different places Chris could have and would have used along the way. So hopefully that'll be, his anniversary is August 20th. So always on that weekend, ideally moving forward.
Okay.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much for being a part of our
Thank you,
podcast
guys.
today. And to anyone who's listening, if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit that like button, comment down below what you think, or any future content that you'd like to see on this podcast. And again, thank you to everyone for being a part of today's episode, and we'll catch you in the next one. See you guys.
See you guys.
Wow.
Jesus. Okay,
guys.
great
Great.
job, Michelle.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Guys, you're
Unbelievable.
Oh, sorry, I'm under my thing.
That's all good.
Oh my
Thank you, and
God.
thank you for this. This is
Yeah,
so.
no
My
problem.
mom is